This Age of Imprisonment trailer answers a lot of questions we had, including a hint about who this strange robot man might be, and a good look at who our playable characters are going to be, including Hyrule's strongest soldier. A part of the ways into Nintendo's hour-long direct extravaganza, we finally got a release date for Age of Imprisonment. November 6th, 2025, which is less than 2 months away, and that is very exciting. And this trailer was an absolute doozy. It gave us a ton of information. And while there are going to be a lot of videos that break the trailer down frame by frame and get into things like the new enemies that we see, there is one thing in particular that I want to talk about, and it is the fact that this trailer gave us an excellent look at the new characters that we'll be playing as. I mentioned this a little bit in a previous video, but Age of Imprisonment is kind of in this tricky position that Age of Calamity didn't have to worry about, where Age of Calamity had a big roster of characters to begin with, especially considering the time travel plot, but even without that, they had a pretty big roster of characters to choose from. You had all 4 of the champions, you had Link and Zelda, and then of course many orbiting characters like Impa and King Rome. It was pretty easy to come up with a big roster of characters. Even if they didn't do the time travel mechanic, they still would have had a pretty decent amount of players. But Tears of the Kingdom is in a bit of a trickier position because it doesn't have a very big roster of characters. You have Princess Zelda, Rauru, Sonia, and the 4 Sages, and Minoru, and that's kind of it. And even with the 4 Sages, they had essentially no personality to speak of in Tears of the Kingdom, so even though we knew they would almost certainly be playable, we had no idea what they were going to be like. And the previous trailers gave us a look at Zelda, Rauru, Sonia, and Minoru in action, and then the most recent trailer prior to this one let us see the Gerudo champion, also known as my Gerudo goth wife, in action, but that's still not very many characters. And finally, with this trailer, we are starting to get a really good idea of the roster we will be playing with. And as I think we all kind of expected, although much to what I imagine will be some people's dismay, it looks like the bulk of the roster is going to be made up of characters essentially invented by the Hyrule Warriors team. And I know a lot of people are going to dislike that. They're going to say that it feels like fan fiction or whatever. I don't agree. I think that the Hyrule Warriors team does a fantastic job of making brand new characters. I love Sia and Lana in the first Hyrule Warriors game. I really love Impa in the second one. I thought Astor was a pretty cool villain too. So I have an immense amount of faith that their characters are going to be cool and like they're going to fit in the series. I think Impa fits into the Breath of the Wild world perfectly. But this trailer gives us a really good look at the many different characters we're going to get to play as, and one of the ways that we get to sort of figure out who we're playing as is by a new mechanic that it's introducing called the Sync Strike, which is essentially a combo attack between 2 characters that allows them to do a special move together. And through who Zelda and other characters do sync strikes with, we can imply that those characters will probably also be playable, and it gives us a good idea. So let's go through the video and sort of get a bit of an idea of who we're going to be able to play as in this game. So of course we already knew we were going to be playing as Princess Zelda and Rauru. You know, we've seen them in action from the very beginning. And sure enough, we see another Sync Strike from them here, but the Sync Strike system also basically confirms that Sonia is going to be playable, which is something that a lot of people had a bizarre amount of resistance to. I've run into a lot of people who really disagreed with the idea that Sonia would be playable, and it was a very strange argument to me. You know, a lot of people saying, oh, well, she's not in the game for very long, so it wouldn't make sense to flesh her out as a character. And it's like, they're going to be fighting for every character they can get in this story, so it doesn't really matter that she's not there for the entire time. And that doesn't even really make sense considering you unlock Calamity Ganon as a character and he's only really there for the final boss, right? And secondly, her not being a combatant doesn't mean anything. Have you ever played a Hyrule Warriors game before? If the character has 2 feet and a pulse, they will find a way to give them a moveset. We see a little bit from the champions here. We got a good look at the Gerudo champion last time, and we got a little bit of a look at the other champions. This one, we get a little bit more. We have a quick clip of what looks like the Goron champion. He's just kind of rolling there. We see Zelda in a joint attack with the Rito Sage, and then a joint attack with the Zora Sage, and although we don't see their face, we actually get a pretty good look at them here. We also get a little bit later on a good look at the Zora Sage being controlled independently. They clearly use a spear, and their moveset looks refreshingly unique from pretty much all of the other Zoras that are playable in the Hyrule Warriors franchise. And then a joint attack with the Gerudo Sage, who is of course going to be the greatest character. We also see her in in a sync strike with another Gerudo woman who looks to be the current captain of the Gerudo, pretty identical to Buliara in Breath of the Wild. And I have to assume that this is a playable character too, since they're doing a sync strike. So the current captain of the Gerudo Guard is likely to be playable. And from that, I think we can probably surmise that each of the species is going to have one extra character in addition to the Sage. So we'll probably get one extra Zora, one extra Goron, and one extra Rito. And those will sort of fill the same roster spots that the Descendants did in the original game. So we were able to piece together a good number of characters we'll get to play as by looking at these sync strikes and a couple little clips of gameplay here and there. But the trailer also gives us a chunky look at some of the other characters, including some brand new ones. But first, I want to visit a mystery that we were left with at the end of the previous trailer, which is towards the end when we heard the familiar theme of Fi, who is of course the spirit of the Master Sword, who seemed to be somehow involved in a Zonai suit of armor sort of being resurrected or brought to life. And in this trailer, we seem to see that character in action. It starts off with us seeing a character that seems to be gliding through the air, and as we get closer to them, we see that it is definitely a construct of some variety. And as we get this shot of it descending, we can see that it's a mech, not dissimilar to the one that Minoru controls, but smaller, more humanoid shaped and controlling itself. And when it transforms, it seems to get some form of tunic. But we actually have a little bit more information still, because the Age of Imprisonment Twitter account actually tweeted out some new concept art that includes this construct character. We can see that it definitely looks like it is some sort of Link parallel, but the idea of this literally being Link in spirit form seems to be pretty out the window. This is not Link, this is somebody completely different. It's possible that it is somehow related to the ancient hero, or it might be a brand new thing that is sort of created by Fi. We have absolutely no idea, but I'm pretty excited to learn more. It looks like a pretty cool playstyle at the very least. And then of course we have to talk about the greatest reveal of the trailer. This little Korok warrior, Hyrule's strongest soldier. We only get to see a little clip of him, but he looks spectacular. 100% I will be controlling him, and I'm actually pretty excited to learn more about him. I would love if they gave him the same name as one of the Kokiri from Ocarina of Time. I think that would be a really fun way to tie those games together, although maybe not. I think that would also probably upset people who are super into the lore, but he looks spectacular. I can't wait to learn more about that little goober, and I think he's almost certainly going to be the most popular character in the game. But overall, the characters that we're looking at so far is Princess Zelda, Rauru, Sonia, the Sage of the Goron, the Sage of the Rito, the Sage of the Zora, and the Sage of the Gerudo, Minoru, Captain of the Gerudo, this construct fellow, and this amazing little Korok. So that is already a pretty decent amount of characters, and I have to assume that we're probably going to have some post-game unlockables, probably the villains. You know, I would not be surprised. I would actually be astonished if Ganondorf was not playable. I'm also expecting some of the bosses to be playable. The games love to let you play as the monsters sometimes, so I'm expecting that in this game too. So it's shaping up to be a pretty decent roster of characters, all things considered. And I'm going to record another video on this to get my thoughts out more in depth and separately, but I actually think that the existence of the Gerudo captain as a playable character is a huge blow to the idea that this game is going to do time travel stuff again like the last one. And the main purpose of that is, I think you can see that they are trying to fill the character slots that the Descendants would have had if they were bringing them over. There wouldn't be the need to add extra characters. You know, there wouldn't be the need to have 2 characters of each species if they were just planning on bringing Riju and friends over. So I think that makes it pretty likely that this is actually going to be a retelling of the actual story. That being said, I'm not sure it's going to be a retelling that people like. I'm already seeing a lot of people skeptical about this construct ancient hero fella, which fair enough. I think he's cool, but you know, people get pretty worked up about that stuff. Basically, I think it absolutely is going to be like a straightforward retelling. I think they learned their lesson on that, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a retelling that people like. You know, people are the well is poisoned when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom story. and I don't really think there's anything they could do to fix that, but it's just a reality of the situation that people are predisposed to disliking everything, and when they see something that seems like it might be a little bit cheesy, you know, like the construct that people are worried is going to be the ancient hero or whatever, makes them feel like they don't like it. But I think it's cool. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'm just easy to please. Anyways, what are your thoughts? I'm still as excited as ever. As I've mentioned before, I'm not just a massive Zelda fan, but I am very specifically a massive Hyrule Warriors fan. I love both of the games so much, and I know for a fact I'm going to love this one too. That does mean that I come from this from a significant position of bias, because these games don't have to do much to win me over. So I would love to hear more critical thoughts from you folks, or perhaps if you are also big fans of the series, I would love to hear your thoughts as well. And that's pretty much everything I got for you. I'm going to start working on another video about the topic I mentioned. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and as always, stay safe out there. It's dangerous to go alone.